As it seems, the extremely scandalous cabinet of the United Kingdom just lost its spine this week. Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the English state, finally submitted his resignation letter to the officials. The 58-year-old leader, who was enforced fiercely by his senior officials to step down from his post as the Prime Minister of Great Britain, had more than one corrupted secret under his table than the world knows. Just the preceding week, all of these senior cabinet ministers concluded that the only way to keep their extremities and Johnson aloof at the same time was to self-resign. Just following the one after another resignation of these big shots, it seems like Boris Johnson was left with no other choice. Stick with us till the end to know the events that actually persuaded the entire English cabinet to force Johnson out of it, and further details following his resignation. Well, Boris Johnson's association with the English cabinet doesn't end right here. After his resignation anytime soon, even after resigning, it was seen that he turned up to his office just like usual, just the next day. Boris clearly stated that he would detach himself from his position only once a deserving replacement has been found. This created much of a hubbub in the British subcontinent to immediately search for a replacement. People all over the country started throwing in their opinions, some going as far as persuading Johnson to immediately vacate his seat, with or without a proper replacement. But unfortunately, the parliamentary rules in the UK were quite in the favor of Johnson, as they say that the Prime Minister whose tenure has ended recently or had been impeached fully retains the right to his previous powers until a new official is assigned in the same place. So it is pretty evident that although Boris Johnson has been removed, the English civilians would continue to witness him in his bygone seat until yet. The foremost concern of Britain's Conservative Party is to find a new candidate overnight to replace Boris Johnson and act as the instantaneous leader for the time being, or serve their tenure as they might please the civilians. Here's a little insight for the ones who aren't in touch with the whole situation. Boris Johnson was forced to leave, not due to any seemingly significant corruption, but rather because of a series of under-the-table unethical scandals that had been hovering around the parliamentary building for quite a while now. For instance, Boris Johnson constantly acted as the supporting hand of Chris Pincher. Earlier, Chris Pincher, a government parliamentary official, was accused of groping and assaulting a few men, and Boris Johnson had been drawing a veil over the entire situation through all these times. Even when he was interviewed several times, the most powerful personality of the English state, the Prime Minister, changed his statements several times repeatedly, which is an utter disgrace. The entire Chris Pincher situation was the last stroke required to knock off the ex-Prime Minister, as earlier the Conservative Party had several reasons already, such as him not following COVID protocols while attending personal parties, to pretty much devastating the entire international relationships and monetary affairs of the country. Boris Johnson was set to bid a goodbye to the cabinet real-time soon. The Boris Johnson parliamentary affairs didn't last as long, as the then 56-year-old was elected to rule the United Kingdom just back in 2019. Ever since the man had stepped up in his position, there had been constant retaliation from the opposition party and from the ruling party as well. Even though it is not an unknown fact that Boris Johnson had to leave someday or other, the question which follows next is the fate of Britain's parliamentary in the future. Hence, as it was already the season of exceptions in the Parliament House, the cabinet made room for another one. The officials concluded that electing a prime minister by conventional means would take up several months, and as per the rules, it is no one but Boris Johnson who will have to look after the country until then. Having him in the ruling position would only hurt the sentiments of the civilians more, thus quick action was required. Hence, it was finally concluded that a 1922 committee would be called upon, who held the special powers to make or break laws. By the time the general elections start, this elite committee would be indulged in appointing a new face as the spine of the parliament, rightly eligible for the powers. A press conference was held right after Johnson submitted his resignation, in which the then Prime Minister stated that it was absolutely devastating for him to give up the most powerful job in the world, which he had earned himself back in 2019 as a mandate resulting in the general elections. Johnson had been holding tight to the position even after 50 government officials' resignations, demanding he loses his powers. But finally, Boris Johnson had to choose his country over his pride, and thus stepped down with his head held high.